Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
The champagne glass hit the marble countertop harder than Victoria intended, but not hard enough to break. Just like everything else in our downtown condo, expensive, pristine, built to withstand impact. She was laughing, that brittle sound she made when she thought she was being clever. "James said something funny tonight," she announced, scrolling through her phone while I organized the scattered legal briefs she'd dumped across the kitchen island. "He said you're like background music. Pleasant enough, but too easy to replace." I paused, a motion brief halfway to its proper stack. "Is that what you think?" She didn't look up. Her manicured fingers tapped against the screen with the same rhythm she used during depositions. Quick, dismissive, final. "I think you're exactly what you've always been, Marcus. Reliable, forgettable, easy." I nodded slowly and continued organizing her mess with mechanical precision. Each document sorted by date, case number, priority level. The same methodical approach I used at work when million-dollar contracts hinged on finding one buried email in a terabyte of corporate data. "James sounds like a smart guy," I said, aligning the edges of her client files. "Opposing counsel, right? The Meridian case?" She was already walking away, heels clicking against hardwood. "Fix my laptop while you're at it. It's running slow again." And there it was. The casual dismissal that had defined our marriage for the past 2 years. Victoria saw me as live-in IT support, the quiet husband who could troubleshoot her devices and organize her chaos, but couldn't possibly understand the complexities of high-stakes litigation. What she didn't know was that I spent my days preventing corporate espionage for a Fortune 500 tech company. That my security clearance came from 5 years in military intelligence. That when Victoria's colleagues barely acknowledged me at her firm's events, I was analyzing their behavioral patterns the same way I tracked foreign data breaches. Just last month, at her firm's anniversary party, I'd watched her introduce me to a federal judge as my husband. "He does something with computers." The dismissive wave of her hand, the way she immediately redirected conversation to her latest courtroom victory, it was a pattern I'd learned to recognize. Victoria needed me invisible, competent enough to fix her problems, but forgettable enough not to threaten her spotlight. The irony was that half the attendees at that party had used my consulting services through their companies. The state attorney general's chief of staff had shaken my hand with genuine respect, mentioning how my threat assessment had prevented a major data breach in their office. Victoria hadn't even noticed the conversation. I picked up her MacBook Pro, noting the sticky residue around the trackpad. Wine stains and fingerprints covered the screen. For someone who billed clients $800 an hour for attention to detail, Victoria treated her personal devices like disposable notebooks. "I'll take a look at it for you." I called after her, but she'd already disappeared into the bedroom. The laptop took 3 minutes to decrypt. Victoria used the same password for everything. Victory Law 2019, the year she made senior partner. I'd set up her digital security 2 years ago, back when she still asked my opinion on things. Now she just handed me broken technology and expected miracles. The machine was running slow because her browser cache was clogged with deleted history. Amateur mistake. When you delete something, you're really just telling the computer to ignore it until something else needs that space. For someone with a cybersecurity expert husband, Victoria had remarkably poor digital hygiene. I ran a standard recovery scan while making coffee. The kind of passive forensics I did daily at work, pulling deleted files from corporate drives to track insider trading or industrial espionage. This time, though, the recovered data wasn't spreadsheets and email threads. Hotel booking confirmations. 12 of them, spanning 3 months. Always the same pattern, Tuesday and Thursday nights at the Meridian downtown. She'd claimed court appearances on those dates. I cross-referenced her Outlook calendar, which synced automatically to our shared iCloud account. Client meetings. Every Tuesday and Thursday. Preparing depositions with opposing counsel, the entries read. Extended court sessions, said another. The coffee finished brewing while I stared at the screen. 23 years of marriage, 15 years in intelligence work, and I'd learned to trust patterns over explanations. Victoria's pattern was clear. She was lying. But patterns needed validation. Single data points could be coincidences. I needed more. Her credit card statements synced to our shared financial app. I pulled 3 months of transactions, sorted by merchant and date. The hotel charges appeared like clockwork, Tuesdays and Thursdays, always paid with her personal American Express. But there were other charges too. Expensive lingerie from boutiques I'd never seen her shop at. Dinners at restaurants she claimed were solo client meetings, but the bill amounts suggested 2 people. The financial pattern told a story Victoria thought she'd hidden. Spa treatments on Wednesdays, the day after her hotel visits. Expensive champagne purchases from a wine shop near the Meridian. A $200 charge at a luxury florist with a delivery address I didn't recognize. I cross-referenced the florist's address with commercial property records. James Whitmore's law office was 3 blocks away. Victoria was sending flowers to her lover's workplace, using our shared credit account to fund her affair's romantic gestures. One transaction caught my attention. Agent provocateur, $340, 3 weeks ago. I'd never seen that particular purchase in her wardrobe. I finished organizing Victoria's files and set her laptop aside. The forensic scan could run overnight. Tomorrow, I'd have a complete picture of her deleted digital life. By morning, the laptop had surrendered everything. Browser history going back 6 months, deleted photos, cached email drafts she'd never sent. I created an encrypted folder on my personal drive, something she'd never find, even if she knew to look. I labeled it Project Replacement. The pattern was even clearer in daylight. Victoria had been meeting James Whitmore, opposing counsel on her biggest case, twice weekly for 3 months. Not just meeting. The recovered photos showed intimate dinners, champagne toasts, his hand on her back as they entered the Meridian's elevator. James Whitmore. I looked him up in the State Bar directory. 42, partner at Whitmore and Associates, married to Sarah Whitmore. 3 children according to his firm bio. Specializes in corporate litigation, which meant he was directly opposing Victoria in the Meridian case, a $50 million merger dispute. I sat back in my office chair, processing. This wasn't just adultery. Victoria was compromising a major case through her relationship with opposing counsel. Pillow talk between lawyers on opposite sides of a $50 million lawsuit constituted professional misconduct. Career-ending misconduct. Victoria breezed into the kitchen around 9, already dressed for court in her power suit. She moved through our space like she owned it and everything in it, including me. "Coffee smells good," she said, pouring herself a cup. "Did you fix my laptop?" "Cleaned up the cache files. Should run faster now." She smiled, the same smile she used on clients. Warm but distant. "You're so good at that technical stuff. I don't know what I'd do without you." I watched her gather her briefcase, her phone, her keys. The same routine every morning, but now I saw it differently. She wasn't preparing for battle in the courtroom. She was preparing for her double life. "Big day today?" I asked. "Meridian depositions. Might run late." She paused at the door, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. "Don't wait up if I'm not back by 10. Will James be there?" The question hung in the air for exactly 3 seconds. Long enough for Victoria's shoulders to tense almost imperceptibly. Long enough for her to register that I'd said, "James," not opposing counsel. "I assume so," she said, voice carefully neutral. "He represents their interests." I nodded. "Tell him I said hello." She left without responding. That afternoon, I made my first active move. Victoria's phone backed up to our shared iCloud account, a setting I'd configured years ago for convenience. She'd never changed it. Why would she? I was just the IT guy. The backup included her text messages. Months of conversations with James Whitmore, starting professional and gradually becoming intimate. The timeline was precise. Professional courtesy in January, flirtation by February, explicit arrangements by March. The messages revealed more than an affair. They revealed Victoria sharing case strategy, discussing her client's negotiation limits, even forwarding confidential memos. James was using their relationship to gain tactical advantage in the lawsuit. One exchange from last week made me screenshot immediately. Victoria, asterisk client authorized up to $35 million settlement. Don't tell anyone I told you that winking face asterisk. James, asterisk your secret's safe. Among others. Asterisk. Victoria, Tuesday can't come fast enough. James, asterisk same room. I have a surprise for you asterisk. Professional misconduct. Violation of client confidentiality. Breach of fiduciary duty. Victoria had handed opposing counsel her client's settlement ceiling. In intelligence work, we called this treason. In the legal profession, it was grounds for disbarment. I copied every message, every photo, every voice memo into Project Replacement. Then I began building a timeline. The next phase required patience. Victoria had gotten sloppy, but I needed overwhelming evidence. The kind that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. The kind that would hold up in bar association proceedings. I activated passive monitoring on our home network. Victoria used our Wi-Fi for everything, including personal calls with James. The router logged every packet, every connection, every bit of data flowing through our condo. I set up automated capture protocols, the same tools I used at work to track corporate espionage. The irony wasn't lost on me. Victoria constantly complained about our internet being too technical when I upgraded our security systems. She'd roll her eyes when I explained encryption protocols or network monitoring capabilities. "Just make it work, Marcus," she'd say dismissively. "I don't need a computer science lecture." Now those same systems she'd dismissed were documenting her betrayal with forensic precision. Every video call with James, every private message, every confidential document she'd forwarded to opposing counsel, all captured and archived by the security infrastructure she'd been too arrogant to understand. Within a week, I had audio recordings of their phone conversations, legally obtained through monitoring my own network, though Victoria would never understand the technical distinction. She thought cybersecurity was just passwords and antivirus software. The recordings were devastating. Not just intimate conversations, but detailed discussions of case strategy, client weaknesses, settlement positions. Victoria was actively sabotaging her own client's interests to maintain her affair with opposing counsel. One recording from Thursday night made everything clear. Marcus is working late again. Victoria's voice, slightly breathless. "Sometimes I think he's invisible in his own life." James laughed. "Does he suspect anything, Marcus?" "God, no. He's too busy with his computers to notice anything happening in the real world. Besides, he's exactly what I told you. Reliable, forgettable, easy to replace." "Lucky for us," James replied. "Speaking of which, what's your client's backup position if the merger falls through?" And Victoria told him. Everything. Contingency plans, alternative buyers, financial projections. A complete betrayal of professional ethics wrapped in casual cruelty about her marriage. The conversation continued for another 12 minutes. James asked specific questions about settlement thresholds, client vulnerabilities, even internal firm politics that could affect the case. Victoria answered each one eagerly, as if sharing state secrets was foreplay. "What if your client discovers we've been coordinating strategies?" James asked at one point. Victoria laughed. "They'd have to be smart enough to catch us first. These corporate types think lawyers are magicians anyway. They don't question how we get results, just that we deliver them." I saved the audio file and sat in the darkness of my office, processing the scope of what I'd discovered. Victoria wasn't just cheating on our marriage. She was cheating on her professional obligations, her clients, her oath as an attorney. She'd called me easy to replace, but she'd never asked what I do when I'm replaced. That night, I couldn't sleep, not from emotional turmoil, but from the systematic planning required for what came next. This wasn't about revenge, it was about consequences. Professional, legal, personal consequences for someone who'd violated every standard of trust. I made coffee at 3 a.m. and returned to my office. The evidence needed to be organized, cross-referenced, and presented with the same rigor I applied to corporate espionage cases. I created a master timeline, correlating hotel visits with court dates, phone calls with case developments, financial transactions with professional meetings. The pattern was devastating in its clarity. Victoria had turned her affair into a competitive advantage, using intimate access to opposing counsel to gain tactical information about settlement positions, witness strategies, even client vulnerabilities. She wasn't just betraying our marriage, she was committing fraud against her own clients. I spent the next 2 weeks building an unassailable case. Bank records showing Victoria's personal expenses coinciding with case meetings. Hotel keycard data cross-referenced with court schedules. GPS tracking from her phone showing locations that contradicted her calendar entries. My security clearance provided access to resources Victoria couldn't imagine. Corporate investigation tools, data correlation software, forensic analysis protocols refined through years of tracking foreign intelligence operations. The breakthrough came when I analyzed metadata from photos Victoria had deleted months ago. Digital cameras embed location data, timestamps, even device information in image files. Victoria's phone had automatically backed up pictures she thought she'd erased, intimate shots with James, dinner photos from restaurants she'd claimed were client meetings, even a selfie in the Meridian's elevator with a timestamp showing 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. She'd told me she was in court until 6. One photo made me pause. Victoria wearing the agent provocateur lingerie I'd found on the credit card statement, taken in what was clearly a hotel room. The metadata showed it was captured 3 weeks ago at 4:23 p.m. I cross-referenced that timestamp with her calendar. Meridian depositions, full-day session. I also began researching James Whitmore's personal life. Social media posts from his wife, Sarah, showing family vacations and school events. The same dates James claimed to be working late on the Meridian case. Photos of their 3 children, ages 8, 10, and 12. Sarah's LinkedIn profile described her as a pediatric nurse who believes in the power of family. Sarah had posted a particularly revealing status update 2 weeks ago. Another late night at the firm for James. Thank goodness for FaceTime so the kids can say goodnight to Daddy. This case is consuming our entire lives. The timestamp showed 9:15 p.m. on a Thursday. Victoria's phone GPS data showed her at the Meridian Hotel at that exact time. Another victim of Victoria's selfishness. I drafted a comprehensive report. 37 pages of evidence, timeline analysis, and legal citations. Professional misconduct, conflict of interest, breach of fiduciary duty, violation of client confidentiality. Each charge supported by digital evidence, financial records, and recorded conversations. The State Bar Association would receive copies. So would Victoria's clients, James's law firm, and Sarah Whitmore. But first, Victoria needed to understand what she'd lost. On a Tuesday night, one of her extended court sessions, I prepared the final piece. A single USB drive, matte black, unmarked. Inside, everything. The complete archive of her digital betrayal, professionally documented and legally airtight. The drive contained 37 separate files. Audio recordings organized by date. Photo evidence with metadata analysis. Financial records showing expense patterns. Text message transcripts with legal commentary. Email chains demonstrating confidentiality breaches. GPS tracking data overlaid with court schedules. I'd also included a professional analysis, the same type of threat assessment I'd prepare for corporate clients. A clear explanation of each ethical violation, relevant bar association rules, potential penalties ranging from suspension to disbarment. Victoria would understand immediately that this wasn't emotional retaliation. This was a systematic documentation of professional misconduct. I placed it on her pillow with a handwritten note. Since you mentioned replacements, this contains what replaces trust. Victoria came home at 11:47 p.m., humming some tune I didn't recognize. She'd been drinking champagne, based on the scent that followed her upstairs. Celebrating another successful deception, probably. The humming stopped abruptly when she reached the bedroom. I was in my office, but I could hear everything through the thin walls. The sharp intake of breath. The rustle of paper as she read the note. The click of her laptop booting up. Then silence. For 23 minutes, complete silence. I imagined her scrolling through the files, watching her professional life dissolve with each piece of evidence. The hotel photos, the recorded conversations, the forwarded emails containing confidential client information. The first sound was a sob. Quiet, choked, quickly suppressed. Victoria didn't cry often. It smudged her makeup and complicated her image as an invincible litigator. Then her phone rang. James, probably wondering why she hadn't called to debrief their evening. I heard her fumble for the device, saw the light under our bedroom door disappear as she declined the call. She tried calling him back 5 minutes later. The call went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Same result. By midnight, she was pacing. I could hear her bare feet against the hardwood, quick nervous steps between the bed and the window. Occasionally she'd stop, presumably to reread something on the laptop, then resume pacing. At 1:15 a.m., I heard typing. Rapid, desperate keystrokes. She was probably drafting emails, text messages, anything to contain the damage. But there was no containing this. I'd learned from military intelligence that successful operations require overwhelming force applied at multiple pressure points simultaneously. While Victoria discovered the scope of her exposure, I was executing the distribution phase. Anonymous emails to the State Bar Association. Copies to James's law firm and Victoria's clients. A separate package for Sarah Whitmore, marked urgent and confidential. Victoria never came to bed that night. I found her at dawn, still in her rumpled court clothes, staring at the USB drive like it might spontaneously combust. "We need to talk," she said without looking up. I poured coffee, noting how her hands shook when she reached for the cup. Victoria's famous composure had cracked, revealing something smaller and more desperate underneath. "How long have you known?" she asked. 3 weeks of active investigation. But I've been noticing patterns for months. She flinched at the word investigation. In her world, that meant federal prosecutors and career-ending headlines. She started, then stopped. "You can't send this to anyone, Marcus. It would destroy everything I've worked for." "Already sent," I said quietly. The coffee cup slipped from her hands, hitting the marble floor in pieces. Brown liquid splashed against white tile, spreading in patterns that reminded me of digital data corruption. Clean systems suddenly compromised beyond repair. "You what?" "State Bar Association received copies at midnight. James's firm gets theirs this morning. Your clients should have the relevant portions by noon." Victoria's face went through several emotions at once: shock, anger, desperation, then a kind of hollow recognition. She was smart enough to understand the implications. "Sarah," she whispered, "has a right to know what her husband's been doing. And with whom." Victoria buried her face in her hands. "You don't understand. This case, it's career-defining. If the Bar Association investigates." "When they investigate," I corrected, "the evidence is overwhelming." She looked up sharply. "You're enjoying this." I considered the question seriously. Was I enjoying Victoria's destruction? The systematic dismantling of her carefully constructed life? "No," I said finally. "But I'm not sorry either." She tried negotiating then. Offered couples counseling, promised to end the affair, suggested we take a vacation to work things out. All the standard protocols for marital crisis management. But this wasn't a marital crisis. This was professional misconduct on a massive scale, documented with the thoroughness of a federal investigation. Victoria had compromised a $50 million lawsuit, betrayed client confidentiality, and violated every ethical standard of legal practice. "You said I was easy to replace," I reminded her. "But you never asked what I do when I'm replaced." Victoria's phone buzzed constantly that morning. James, trying to reach her. Her law firm's senior partners, demanding immediate meetings. Clients who'd received anonymous tips about their attorney's conflicts of interest. The cascade of consequences played out exactly as I'd predicted. Victoria's assistant called at 9 a.m., voice carefully neutral. "Mr. Henderson wants to see you immediately. Please bring any files related to the Meridian case." I watched Victoria's face drain of color as she listened. In corporate espionage, we called this cascade failure, when one compromised system triggers the collapse of interconnected networks. Victoria had never imagined that her personal misconduct could topple her professional empire so quickly. Her phone rang again. James, finally calling back. I watched Victoria decline the call, then immediately call him back. Straight to voicemail. She tried 3 more times with the same result. "He's not answering," she said, more to herself than to me. "Probably busy explaining things to his wife." I replied calmly, sipping my coffee. "Sarah received her package this morning too." Victoria stared at me like I'd just announced the building was on fire. "What package?" "The evidence relevant to her situation. Photos, financial records, timeline of the affair. She deserved to know what her husband was doing while she was working night shifts at the children's hospital." By noon, she was unemployed. The firm couldn't afford association with an attorney under bar investigation. By evening, the Meridian case had settled for $42 million, exactly between the $35 million Victoria had revealed to James and the $50 million her client originally demanded. James fared worse. His wife, Sarah, filed for divorce that afternoon, taking their 3 children and half his assets. His law firm placed him on administrative leave pending the bar investigation. Opposing counsel sleeping with each other was scandalous. Sharing confidential client information was criminal. Victoria packed that night. Efficient, methodical, taking only what she'd brought to our marriage 15 years ago. She'd always been practical about business transactions. "Do you hate me?" she asked, standing in our doorway with 2 suitcases and a file box of personal items. I thought about it seriously. Did I hate the woman who'd shared my bed for 15 years, then dismissed me as background music in my own life? No, I said finally. But I finally love myself enough not to be quiet anymore. She nodded once, a sharp judicial gesture accepting an unfavorable ruling. The door closed behind her with the same quiet click I used to secure classified files at work. Final, irrevocable, professionally complete. I poured coffee and opened my laptop. Tomorrow I'd change the locks, cancel the shared accounts, and remove Victoria's access from all our digital systems. Standard security protocols for compromised assets. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Whitmore. "Thank you for telling me the truth. My children and I deserve to know." 3 days later, the State Bar Association announced its investigation into serious allegations of professional misconduct involving conflict of interest and breach of client confidentiality. James and Victoria were named as subjects of the inquiry. The legal community was small enough that news traveled quickly. Victoria's former colleagues began distancing themselves, declining lunch invitations, and avoiding her at professional events. James faced similar isolation, his reputation damaged beyond repair by the systematic documentation of his ethical violations. I received a formal letter from the State Bar Association requesting my testimony as a witness in their investigation. They were particularly interested in my technical expertise, how I discovered the misconduct, the methodology for documenting digital evidence, the reliability of electronic surveillance in legal proceedings. Mr. Chun, the lead investigator, explained during our preliminary meeting, "Your background in military intelligence and cybersecurity makes you uniquely qualified to explain these technical methods to the disciplinary board." I agreed to cooperate fully. After all, I documented everything according to the same protocols I used for corporate investigations. Chain of custody, metadata verification, cross-referencing multiple data sources. The evidence would speak for itself. Victoria took a position at a small family law practice in the suburbs. 20% of her previous salary, handling divorces and custody disputes. James moved to his brother's firm in another state, starting over as a junior associate at age 42. I kept the condo, the investments, and my security clearance. My colleagues at work began treating me differently. Not as the quiet tech guy with the high-powered lawyer wife, but as the man who'd professionally documented a complex fraud and exposed it with surgical precision. The transformation was subtle but noticeable. During team meetings, my opinions carried more weight. When discussing corporate investigation protocols, colleagues deferred to my expertise. The story of how I'd uncovered and documented Victoria's professional misconduct had spread through the intelligence community, not as gossip, but as a case study in methodical evidence gathering. "Heard your divorce was comprehensive," my supervisor mentioned during a performance review. "Thorough," I corrected. "Like any good investigation." He smiled. "We're expanding the corporate espionage division. Interested in leading a team?" The promotion came with a 40% salary increase and oversight of 12 junior analysts. My first case involved tracking foreign hackers who'd penetrated a defense contractor's database. The methodical approach I developed during Project Replacement proved invaluable: pattern recognition, data correlation, systematic documentation of digital evidence. That evening, I sat in my office reviewing case files for my new position. The same methodical approach I'd used on Victoria's betrayal now applied to foreign hackers and industrial spies. The work felt familiar, comfortable, precise. My personal files were organized in a new folder structure. Victoria's digital footprint had been systematically archived and sealed, not deleted. In intelligence work, you never delete evidence, but encrypted and stored where it could only accessed with proper authorization. The archive contained 847 individual files: audio recordings, financial documents, photo evidence, metadata analysis, timeline correlations, legal research, professional misconduct documentation. 3 months of systematic investigation reduced to organized digital evidence, cross-referenced and verified according to federal investigation standards. I'd also documented the aftermath. Victoria's disbarment hearing, scheduled for next month. James's resignation from his firm before formal disciplinary action. Sarah Whitmore's successful divorce settlement, granting her full custody and 70% of marital assets. The Meridian case resolution, which had cost Victoria's former client an additional $7 million due to compromised negotiation positions. Consequences rippling outward like data corruption through interconnected systems. Project replacement was complete. I opened a new folder labeled New Foundation and began planning tomorrow's work. Clean systems, verified assets, trusted protocols. Everything Victoria had claimed I was reliable, thorough, methodical, but now applied to building something better. Outside, the city hummed with its usual evening rhythm. Background music, Victoria might have called it. But I'd learned to appreciate the steady, dependable sounds that keep everything else running smoothly. Pleasant enough, perhaps, but definitely not easy to replace.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.